Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Tony Lockowitz. I'm the chairman of the Oakmont Long Range Planning Committee. And today we're here to do a number of things. We'd like to bring you up to date on what we have been up to over the last few months with regard to preparing our plan. We'd also like to talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing in the future. But most of all, we're here to listen to you. It's very important for us to get feedback and input, because if we prepare a plan in a vacuum without adequate public input, then you know what's going to happen when the plan is done. People won't like it. We're going to try to increase our ability to listen to you, and I'll just go over a little bit about the formalities and format in just a minute. Here we are in beautiful Sonoma Valley. There's Oakmont and environs snuggled right in the middle with the mountains to the north, the beautiful state park to the south, vineyards, agricultural fields, abundant. It's just a beautiful place to live, and part of the reason for doing a plan is to make sure that we keep what we have and possibly enhance it and make it better, but at least we know we're in a special place, and we think the hard work that our committee and other people are doing on the plan are well worth it. What is the purpose of a plan? I mean, it looks pretty obvious. The purpose of the plan is to provide a document to be used to guide local decision-making by Oakmont boards, committees, and residents in a coordinated manner. Sounds simple. However, remember, you've got a 7-member board of directors. They serve staggered 2-year terms, so you could have up to 3 new directors each year. There are 7 standing committees. Those are permanent committees like long-range planning. I don't know how many other temporary or ad hoc committees we have, but if you add those to about 4,400 residents, trying to coordinate all of the above is not as simple as it looks. It's a lot of work, and we need to be organized about it. How will it help? Well, a number of different ways. We're trying to create a plan that is written, that it goes from year to year, has a sense of permanence about it. It'll help the board prioritize its decisions and spending. It will reduce uncertainty. I mean, it's very important to know what's going on. Too many people say, I didn't know they were doing that, or why are they doing that, even though there was consensus among the boards and committees. If it's written down where someone can read, in a certain year, in the future, our plan is to X, Y, Z. There's less uncertainty and more trust in your board and your leadership. Most of all, we want a plan to involve residents in their own future. This is where you live. This is not somebody else's village or community. 4,400 residents need to be involved to the maximum extent possible. And we're going to talk about some techniques for getting you more closely involved in the preparation of the plan in a minute. Again, who will prepare it? The Long Range Planning Committee has started writing it, but we found that our public outreach program, quite frankly, was limited, and we were not getting enough public feedback or direct involvement. We hope that'll change, and we have some ideas about that coming up later in our presentation. But there are a number of different ways for you to get involved. We'll get to those methods in a minute. Is it binding? No plan can be binding on a board of directors. It is advisory only. But we hope that if the board and committees get behind the plan and feel a part of it, that it's really their plan, and it's not something that the Long Range Planning Committee did and gave it to them, and just another volume to put on the shelf and collect dust. So even though it is not binding, we're hoping there will be widespread support for following the plan once it's completed. We originally hoped to complete the plan by the end of this year, but it looks like it's going to be sometime in 2015 because we've recently added a component for public input and methods for surveying residents to see what they like, what they don't like, etc. We'll get to that in a minute. What will be in the plan? First of all, we've prepared a mission and vision statement. Very important, that should be the central core of what we do and the reason for doing it. If you read the vision statement, it says, without a vision of where you're going, how do you develop a plan to get there? We need to have a common consensus as to where we're going and what we want to be in the future and put it in writing. There's a draft of that vision statement on the website along with other things as well. Challenges for the future, we've only just started to write that. There's going to be, I think that'll be the most interesting and productive part of the plan. For example, a challenge for the future would be to remain competitive with other 55-plus communities in the Northern California area. Easy to say, but how do we do it? We know there are other communities out there that offer different things to people who are retired or about to retire. Baby boomers are coming along. We need to remain relevant and strong so that we can compete with the future residents and not lose our focus. Another challenge would be appearance. Do people coming here drive around and see something that looks kind of shabby, a little old, frayed around the edges, or do they come in and see a bright, vibrant community, very attractive and inviting, a place that they want to stay, purchase a home, spend the rest of their lives? Another challenge, the golf course. We're in the middle of a drought. What happens if the wells on the golf course go dry and the golf course turns brown? Nobody wants to golf on a brown field. If the golf course goes under, we're all in trouble. We have to come up with alternatives of what the land could be used for in the event that hopefully the closure of the golf course would require. So what do we do if the golf course goes under? That is part of the presentation tonight. There are 9 functional elements. Those that are listed here, the first 4, we've done limited work or have not yet started. However, the last 5, from land use down to community appearance, are pretty much complete. They are on the OVI website. There's a paper copy in the library for those of you who don't or won't go on the internet. All of those last 5 elements or chapters of the plan can be read either online or in the library. Today we're going to go over those 5 elements. They are demographic profile of Oakmont, who we are, our population characteristics, community appearance and setting, a discussion of the Oakmont Golf Course, land use within Oakmont as well as around us, and we're going to tell you about a community research project that we have in mind, just getting underway. We still have a lot of T's to cross and I's to dot, but I think you're going to find it very exciting. So let me just tell you the ground rules. What we're going to do is on each of these topics, we're going to give a presenter 10 to 12 minutes to go through in a series of slides to show you what the individual element is all about, major findings. Once he or she is done, we will ask for a quick 5 minutes, questions and answers, or comment on that particular element. So if we do that and we go 5 elements, 10 to 12 minutes a piece, 5 minutes question and answer, we should get through this in about 90 minutes. So around 2:30, we would be at the end of our program. At that point, we're going to open it up to a general question and answer comment period. We're going to sit down, shut up, and listen to you. We'd appreciate not only your constructive input, but if you have criticism, we'd like to hear about that. Tell us what we're doing wrong. We're big boys and girls, we can take it, and we certainly appreciate hearing all opinions. So at that point, I think what I'll do is turn it over to our first speaker, who is Jim Wimette, to talk to us about Oakmont's demographic profile. Jim?
Thank you, Tony. What we did for this particular chapter was to go to the 2010 census data, the census tract and the block data for Oakmont and its environs, and mined out a bit, so I think some really interesting things that gets us grounded with respect to the properties of Oakmont, at least the demographic properties. Just as a reminder, the report in its entirety is on the OVA website, and so if you go into Oakmont Village, you can be directed there. If you have any questions, be sure to call or email me, and I'll get you a copy of it. Okay, well, we all know we're a 55-plus community. When you do the demographics, you find that the population in 2010 was 4465. Interestingly, the population over the last 15 years has not increased a lot. We've pretty much stabilized at that.
Use the mic, Paul.
Pardon?
Use the mic, please.
Can you put that? I can do this too. Oh. Thanks, Tony. Thank you. Starting about 2000, the population reached about 4,500 for Oakmont, and we'll be adding a few, of course, but it's pretty stable. The median age is 76. That means half of us are over 76 and half of us are under 76. Probably not surprising to most of you, women make up a majority of the population here, about 61%. But one of the surprises that we got was that not only are there more women in the older ages, but we are attracting women in greater percentage than men. You find that in the 55, 59 range, it's 80% of the newcomers coming in are women. We currently have, by definition of what a boomer is by the age, we currently have about 20% boomers. We'll have more as time progresses. Let's step back here a little bit. Another interesting tidbit. 2/3 of the men in Oakmont are married, whereas a majority of the women, 57%, are not married. And this is by number of residents, the different married, spouse present, widowed, divorced, never married. Interesting. Married, spouse absent. Okay? I don't know if that number's going to go up or not, but in the good news, the statistics worked out pretty well. The married, spouse present, males equal females. That was a good thing. You know, it didn't have to by virtue of the statistics, but I was really glad that it did. Here's a really interesting tidbit. For every age group from the 55 to 59 all the way up to the 85 plus, every age group, a majority of the men are married, even at the 85 plus. Conversely, for every age group except the youngest, a minority of women are married, and in the 85 plus, 2/3 of the women are widowed. Again, that's probably not a surprise, but at least quantitatively, confirms what I think most of us thought. Practically what that means, if you're involved with emergency response for Oakmont, we have a lot of people who we need to pay special attention to. Let's talk a little bit about home occupancy. The statistics from the census, the 2010 census, show that about half of us live alone. It also shows that about 2/3 of the residences have only one occupant. Simplistically, you can picture it this way. You have 3 houses, 2 of them have only 1 resident each, the 3rd one has 2 residents. So you have 4 residents for 3 houses, half of them live alone, half of them are not. But 2/3 of the houses have only 1 resident. Again, for emergency response, which I'm involved in, that's important to know. About 77% currently of the homes in Oakmont are owner-occupied, and about 23% are rented. Again, a majority of these, 1 resident only. By the way, when you look at the historical data, the number of rental units in the census tract that Oakmont is in, Census Tract 1516, has been going up. We call it monotonically, but it means it just keeps going up. It hasn't steadied out yet. The 2010 census data provide an interesting window into the financial condition of the residents of Oakmont. I think some folks in Santa Rosa think of us as it being a very homogeneous community in every respect, not just ethnically or whatever, but that is not necessarily true, and it is certainly not true in the financial side. And there's almost a split here. If you're married, you have with your spouse alive, you have a very good chance of financially doing well. If you're not, you don't. Specifically, 40% of the married couples have household incomes of over $100,000 back in 2010, which was not a great time. It was after a financial crisis. However, only 5% of the singles did. On the other hand, on those in that category of 35%, 35,000 and less, very few of the married couples were in that category, but 39% of the singles were in that category. So it makes a big difference. I've got a couple quiz questions, and I'm going to finish with these quiz questions. How many people saw that the Press Democrat article from a few weeks ago? Raise your hand. Well, I'll be. Not as many people as I thought. Okay, well, I was excited about it. So, quiz time. One of the quotes was, quote, "It seems like whenever a home goes on the market, bang, a boomer moves in." So this is true, false. Is it yes? The boomers are swarming in, buying all the homes? Or is it 2? No way. The slackers couldn't afford to move here. Or is it something like 3, where not quite? We have a median age of 66 for the new home buyers, which means that half of the home buyers are boomers or less. Half of them are older than that. And that's the right answer. We have as many people buying homes in the people who are in the 75 to 80 age group in the last 3 years as the people in the 55 to 59 age group. So we attract people from all of the ages. And we'll finish up with this one. This was one of our favorites too. Quote, "Oakmont's population is collectively growing younger." Well, my wife looked at me and she said, "Not around here, we're not." So is it yes because boomers are swarming in? Or is it no? Hey, we're all getting older. And they may be moving in, but we're all getting older. Or is it, folks are moving in, that are younger, but we still have a lot of people who are also aging. And in particular, the reason why, because we're not building lots and lots of new houses, for a new person to come in, another person has to move out. You can have a million boomers trying to get into Oakmont, but if you only have 35 homes that are for sale, that's what's for sale. It'll drive the price, but it will not drive the rate. And the average, the median age, or median time in which people stay in a home in Oakmont is about 12 years. So that tells you something about how fast the change can occur. So my last slide, I'd like to finish with a couple of things that we've learned as a result of this. You know, as part of the long-range plan, we look on behalf of the board, we need to look at all of the residents and plan for all of the residents. The newcomers, the people that are here, the people that are aging in place. And that's really, really important. And there may be some challenges associated with that. Secondly, look at, these are just numbers. This doesn't describe who we are. It tells us a little bit about the demographics. But, you know, there's a whole lot more we need to learn. Even simple things like, I wonder how many people in Oakmont use the internet. We know from other communities like us, there's approximately 30% of the people in Oakmont who probably do not have internet. We haven't measured that. That needs to be an important thing to know. But we would estimate that indeed over 1,000 people here probably don't have an email address. So there's a whole set of things that we'll need to know for planning for the future. The last presentation of today, Lisa Berman will be talking about some of the exciting things that we'll be doing to help learn that. And that completes my presentation. Do we have time? We have a little bit of time in case anybody wants to ask any questions. Yes, sir. Does somebody want to give him a mic?
I can yell real loud. Oh, hi. Jerry Thompson over at Twin Lakes. But do you know what the overall median income here at Oakmont is?
Yes, the median income. Remember, the median will be half of the...
Right. Half above, half below.
And this would be the household income. The Census Bureau does not ask each of us individually, it asks for the household income. The average is about 75, and the median is around 60, but I have the number precisely on another sheet of paper, and I can get it for you, maybe even by the end of the meeting.
Thank you.
But yes, we have the number.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir?
You mentioned something about 23% of the people renting.
23% of the people renting in Oakmont. So what does it? How does it skew your numbers in terms of median income or age or anything? How many of them are under 55? How many of them are over 55? How does it affect us?
So Saru was asking whether or not the people who tend to rent tend to be a different age group or a different economic group. At the time for the 2010 data, I looked at it, and the error bars, the uncertainty bars for this small amount of people made it difficult as they segregated by age and by economics. So the short answer is we don't have that number. So it might be useful to have.
Okay, that's it for questions in this portion. Next up is Frank Batchelor to enlighten us on community appearance and setting. Frank? Who was that tall guy that was here?
What a wrench. Before I start on the community appearance, I just want to say what a wonderful project that was that Jim did. he didn't just pull the answers from the census. He had to go through a rigorous examination of the census records, apply mathematics and statistics in order to come up with that. And every time I see what he did, I'm just awed by it. So it's just a fantastic job he did there. I was primarily in charge of drafting the initial section on community appearance. We all moved to Claremont for different, not Claremont, to Oakmont for different reasons. Some of us moved here for the fact that our children are in the area, for the weather. But one thing, when we choose Oakmont itself, we basically choose this because we believe that this is a beautiful community and a beautiful setting. And so one of the primary things we have to do is to maintain the beauty of Oakmont and to improve it wherever we can. So that's why it's a significant portion of the long-range plan. There are basically 4 elements that affect the community itself in terms of maintaining its beauty. One are the OVA buildings, facilities, the common areas, landscaping, open space, and entrance features. A second element are the actual individual homes that we all have here. And the homeowners associations who also have to maintain their common properties. A third element are the commercial properties and the golf course that exist here in Oakmont, all of which are privately owned and which Oakmont has limited control over, or the Oakmont Village Association has limited control over. And then finally, we have the setting itself, the Valley of the Moon, which is probably one of the most fantastic settings for any community in the country. I'll talk about the first element briefly, but basically the board of directors and the landscape committee, which is a standing committee, which assists the board of directors in terms of providing the landscaping and improving the landscaping in Oakmont, are responsible for several areas of Oakmont. We start with the entrance itself, and also with the median strip. We have about a mile of median strip, which is actually, and this is the median strip on Oakmont Drive as you enter Oakmont. It's actually owned by the city of Santa Rosa, and they provide the irrigation, but the board of directors and the Oakmont Village Association are responsible for landscaping that median and also for, well, just replacing landscaping in that particular area. And you can see recently they did re-landscape the median, and this is the result that we have here now that we enter into Oakmont. These beautiful trees, 12 of which are now missing, but they should be back hopefully. The board of directors and the landscape committee also are very important in terms of keeping the common areas of Oakmont looking beautiful. And when the fitness center was built, they made sure that we had a beautiful entrance with nice planting which is drought tolerant, doesn't use a lot of water. And then recently we've also improved the Burger Center appearance on the outside, the north-facing side and the west-facing side with new brick paving. That's all the result of your board in action and the landscape committee helping out. Another element that I mentioned was the commercial property. Now, unfortunately, the commercial property and the golf course itself are privately owned. Oakmont Village Association does not own any of those commercial buildings. Even their administration building is owned by another person, not by the Oakmont Village Association. And the golf course is privately owned. So we have very limited control over what goes on in those properties. However, there are some controls that exist. One is that even though these are private properties, they are commercial properties subject to the city code of Santa Rosa. And Santa Rosa has a sign ordinance code. which can be enforced. Anybody that has a complaint about a private building can contact the City of Santa Rosa, have an enforcement officer come out and examine, and if they think there are violations, then they can be cited for those violations. Perhaps the most recent example here is the real estate office war that's going on Oakmont Drive with the signage. This particular picture here depicts 4 RE/MAX signs. You may not be able to see it, but there's one sign posted on the building. There's one sign over on the corner. Those signs are approved by the Santa Rosa City Code. But then you have a balloon-like structure on top of a moving vehicle, and then you also have a banner. The City of Santa Rosa sign ordinance says you cannot have balloon-type structures, you cannot have banners in terms of advertising. Basically, these signs are for the purpose of identifying the business, not for advertising. So if they wanted to, they could try to enforce this and see if those signs might be removed. So that's what the sign ordinance could do. I've already mentioned that the Oakmont Golf Course is privately owned, and we cannot basically tell them what to do, but we do work together with them to ensure that, that things look as good as possible there. Perhaps the most important element of keeping Oakmont beautiful are what are called the protective restrictions, or the CC&Rs. Each person who buys a home here at Oakmont agrees to abide by these restrictions, or these covenants. And there are a number of them in the CC&Rs, perhaps the most important of which concerns the appearance of the homes themselves. You can't create a nuisance on your homes in Oakmont. That's kind of a vague legal term, but basically it means you can't have your property offending your neighbor's property or causing some type of nuisance. The Architectural Committee establishes these guidelines establishes guidelines to, Tony said, going over here. In any case, let me just go ahead. The most important aspect of the CC&Rs is enforcing how our houses look, okay? The CC&Rs basically say that your homes have to be in nice looking condition, okay? That's a very vague statement, but when you come to such things as what is beauty and all that, you're dealing with subjective values to begin with. We all know that dead bushes and dead lawns are basically not what we want here in Oakmont. So those items can be prevented by the CC&Rs. Finally, we have the Valley of the Moon. That's our setting. We have very limited control over this, but we do have the Oakmont OCDC, Oakmont Community Development Committee, which basically looks out for us in terms of what goes on in the valley, in terms of additional commercialization, whether a particular project such as the NOCA conforms to the development standards in this valley. And so these are also things that we do. Anyhow, what conclusions do we draw from this? We have no final conclusions because we still need input, okay? Some tentative recommendations are we can assign the Landscape Improvement Committee the task of seeking enforcement of the Santa Rosa City codes for commercial properties. We can consider sponsoring Highway 12 pickup in front of the Oakmont through Caltrans for a monthly fee. And then finally, we can keep Landscape Improvement Committee involved in landscaping from the beginning until the finished project. What happens sometimes is that the project is initiated by the Landscape Committee, but as it goes on, they are left out of the process, it goes through the administration, through maintenance, through a contract, and by the time you get the finished product, it's not the same thing. So that's the report. Do you have any questions? Yes.
I have a question about the over 55 rule. Has that been created by the feds, by the state, by a local ordinance? And if people are under 55, what is done about that?
Basically, I believe initially Oakmont was 45. It was superseded by federal law, making it 55. So federal law controls that particular aspect for a senior community such as ours. And we must abide by that because we're incorporated as such a community. Does that answer your question?
Partly. And is there an offense if someone is living there who is under 55 or 45?
No. You can have guests in your home, but you have to have one resident who is at least 55 plus.
And what about 20-year-old renters?
There still has to be a 55-year-old in the house, I believe. I doubt, I'm not trying to give legal advice, but I think that's the interpretation. Anybody correct me on that one? Yes, Cassie?
If you see someone like that that's questionable, please send me the information, we'll investigate it, and he goes straight to our attorney. And the attorney deals with people who are underage.
That was our manager, Cassie Turner. Okay, thank you, Frank. Wonderful. Next up, we're going to talk a little bit about the golf course, and that is John Williston. John, it's all yours.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, because of the time limitations, I'm not going to be able to say a whole lot about the golf course, but I'll do the best I can. One thing about the golf element is that it is available on the website. It's not a short document, it's 27 pages at this point. It's going to be more by the time we're all done, because developments are happening all the time, and you have to take into account the fact that that's happening.
John, Mike.
The element itself has a number of different sections. It has a brief history of the OGC, the Oakmont Golf Club, and you'll find it to be quite interesting if you don't know it. Also, there is another source of information that you have at your disposal, and that's a commemorative magazine that came out. It's got a nice little review of the history of the golf club. We have a description of the golf club as it is today. A lot of people here at Oakmont don't know a whole lot about the golf course, how it's organized, and so on. So you can find out the governance, how it elects boards of directors, the various playing sections, how many people are involved, and so on. The status of the golf industry today is also another section. And the reason why that's important is because trends that are going on nationally are also going on here. And if we want to understand the future of the golf club here, one of the things we need to know is what's going on nationally and how that might affect us. There's a review of the recent literature on golf, where it seems to be going, a number of citations there. Just a small sample of how many there really are. There's a large literature involved here. Challenges for the Oakmont Golf Club. Now, future scenarios and resolutions. One of the problems here is that we have people talking about what happens if the golf club fails. Well, of course, that's always a possibility. The drought's been going on for 3 years. It could go on for who knows. Previous research suggested it could go on for 20 years, 30 years. And how that would affect golf is problematic. People might get used to playing golf on hayfields. We don't know yet. And it's possible that there won't be too many alternatives there. In any event, that's one of the possible scenarios that might lead to problems. There are others. There's a possibility of a currency problem. There's a possibility of economic inflation similar to what we had in the years 2000 and 2008. Now, these are extreme examples, but they do happen, obviously. We had 2 of these events happened just in the last 10 years, 14 years altogether. So we need, if we're going to do a long-range plan, we need to account for what might happen and how to deal with it. And that's one of the major issues that's dealt with in this element. And finally, role of the Oakmont Village Association. Well, as Frank suggested before, we don't have a whole lot of control over the golf club. And the reason why is it's a for-profit organization. And why that's the case is an interesting story in itself. Originally, the golf club started off as a part of Fairfield Homes, the people who actually made the development here. Berger and his wife, who started the Fairfield Homes. He was a developer in Southern California. And they built the golf course as an attraction for people to come buy their homes. This has been going on nationally for a number of years now, with varying levels of success. But in any event, we are independent. OVA is independent of Oakmont Golf Club. And they're perfectly happy to cooperate with us. We have a joint task force now between the golf club and the OVA. They plan things together. There will be a number of events that will be planned for the next number of years. Therefore, sometime there was some antagonism between the two organizations as a result of a big fight that happened back in the late 80s when Berger retired. But that's all gone now. A lot of the people are gone too. Which is one way of solving problems, I guess. This whole business of a golf course community started off in 1960. Del Webb opened up an active adult community in 1960. It had golf courses, it had a number of different facilities in it, and it was an immediate success. They sold, I don't remember how many homes that first weekend. They just opened it up, people came in, signed on the dotted line, and it became obvious that this was a good way to make money in construction. And so a number of developers took the hint and they started developing their own community. And of course, Oakmont is one of the earliest ones. Oakmont, the land for Oakmont was bought in late 62, early 63, and Berger began to plan this as a golf course community. That's how it started. And he brought in Ted Robinson, who was a pretty good golf designer. And they laid out the street plans, the golf course itself, and they started to build. Now, the front nine of the West Golf Course opened up in 1964, 50 years ago. And in 1992, after Berger retired and there was this big fight, the people who wanted to own the golf course here formed a consortium of members, and each of them paid in about $6,000 apiece, and 873 people joined as a part of the Oakmont Golf Club. That paid for the golf club, and it was incorporated then as the Oakmont Golf Club, and we go from there. Now, golf was hot in the 1990s, and it looked like this was a way to make a pile of money. The golf club here, the golf courses were making a lot of money. And so they decided that, well, let's go upscale. And so they started Vision 2000. And what Vision 2000 did was it provided for improvements in the golf club, it built the Quail Inn, and some of those other facilities that were really sadly lacking. The golf club hired a consultant who said, you can make a ton of money with a really good restaurant here in the valley, and you just build a nice restaurant here and you won't know what to do with all the money. Well, that's not quite the way it worked. The restaurant was built and it lost a lot of money. So that led to the realization by the board that perhaps we're going to need some professional help. So they brought in a professional golf association, our management company, Empire Golf. They took over and they started straightening out the problems that were going on here. Vision 2000 was sponsored by bonds that were sold to the membership, and they matured in 2008. When the restaurant didn't make all the money it was supposed to, bingo, they had the problem. So they took out a bank loan, and that bank loan was for about 7% per annum. And it's a big load now. It's about $3.5 million. So this is one of the reasons why the golf club is having a little trouble, because just paying off that bank loan is a problem. Okay, here's more history. Look at the commemorative magazine. That's a shameless plug. Overhead Oakmont, you look at this thing and you realize that, yes, we are a golf course community. The golf course is a skeleton around which we put all the homes, like skin and flesh over bones. The fate of Oakmont Village, to some extent, is also associated with the fate of the golf course. It's important to us. This is a part of what we do here. And we want to make sure, if we can, that the golf course will succeed. Well, how do we do that? It's likely we won't have to do a whole lot. I'm running out of time. I can't believe how fast this goes. But basically, the state of the situation with golf is, A, it's very complex. Golf is a very, very expensive business. It accounts for about $70 billion worth of economic activity, pretty much directly, and about another $50 billion per year in indirect influences. So it's a complicated business. It involves about 25 million Americans who play golf, 16,000 golf courses, and about 3,600 golf course communities like we have here. So this is not an easy problem. Golf was going big time in the 1990s. They were building the golf course every day. And a lot of these golf courses were made super deluxe because that seems to be, at that time, what's sold. Of course, 2000 came along, recession. And then 2008 came along, bigger recession. Why are people surprised that golf is having some troubles? I mean, everybody else is having troubles too. So here we are, here at Oakmont. We're being influenced by national trends, of course. We are not doing that badly in the golf course. Things have pretty well stabilized until this past year when we had a little difficulty with irrigation system. The water issues are significant. We settled with Santa Rosa, the city of Santa Rosa, and we were able, with the money that they gave us, to put a new irrigation system in place that would save water. In return, we didn't get their reclaimed water anymore. That leads to a few problems later on. All of these things are covered in great detail by the golf element. There's just not enough time to get into these issues much at all. You look at that view and you say to yourself, hey, maybe there's a pretty good reason why we live here and why we'd like to stay living here. These are some of the things that were bought with that bank money that we're now trying to pay back. It's nice to have these facilities. This is a birthday party of one of the members, and the food is good now. It wasn't always, and the service is not bad either. Just a quickie, Oakmont Golf Club has about, not quite 500 members, but these people are organized according to a bunch of different playing sections. Here you see these different buttons here, and this is the members' website here. And each one of these buttons represents an organization, has a board of directors, active social life, calendars, and they nearly all of them have tournaments every week. So there's a lot of churn in these things. We have a golf course that we can be proud of. It's older, but it's very, very good. And I really believe that it has a future. I don't think that unless something really cataclysmic happens here, that we won't make it. But at the same time, and please don't be alarmist, the sky is not falling here. But we do have the possibility always of some kind of emergency situation or so on. And if that were to happen, the question is going to be, is it your best interest if Oakmont does something about it? Now, the element does lay out what we could do that wouldn't cost us a whole lot of money if we had to. But again, let me emphasize, this is not what's going to happen in all probability. So there's not a whole lot of time to talk. I'm sorry that we can't get into it. Perhaps we can do some questions and answers though. Oh yeah, okay. Here's golf trends. You can see that there is effect of the recession. The red line is the number of people leaving golf, and the green line is the number of people entering golf. There's always an equilibrium between the two. There are always new people coming in and people leaving for one reason or another. In the case of Oakmont, a number of people leave golf because they've gotten too old to play. But you can see that at the height of the recession, 2009, we lost a number of golfers. But as we move into 2011, and especially 2012, 2013, you begin to get a crossover again. Golf is not in serious trouble. However, it is a victim of its own hubris, if you want to say. We built way too many golf clubs, and so as a result, the supply of golf clubs is perhaps greater than demand right now. Here in Sonoma, just parenthetically, we have 19 golf courses. Our number of golf courses per million population, or in our case, 500,000 population, is roughly similar to what's available nationally. On the other hand, just a quickie, and this is kind of fun. What state do you think has fewer golf courses per population than any of the other states? California. Isn't that a surprise? Yeah, blew me away. Yeah, and there's a reason why. Our ethnic composition is such that a number of people don't play golf because they come from a different ethnic group. Hopefully, though, they'll get into it. It's a very addictive game. Okay, questions? Yes?
What is the percentage of homeowners that play golf here?
Oh boy, I wish I knew.
Okay.
We do have members, though, and the percentage of households that belong to the golf club right now is probably about 10%.
10%?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Secondly, if you come across some of these contingencies that you're talking about, how do you manage that? Does this become a vote of all the households, or does the committee make a decision because there could be some financial outlays?
I can't imagine that it would be anything other than a popular vote. Theoretically, the board of directors has the ability to do an assessment, but I don't think that's likely to ever happen. I mean, we're a community here. We don't want to lose that community. And on the other hand, and if you read the element, you'll find out that there was a community that was looking at that situation. Their golf club was failing. And they said, well, why should we pay for golf? Because after all, I don't play golf. There was another community that was just nearby. Their golf course failed too. And nobody wanted to take it over because it was a lot, it was way too expensive to maintain. So they let it go to hay. Guess what? When the people whose golf course was failing talked to the people whose golf course had already failed, they actually brought them in so they could talk to them. They decided, we better do something about our golf club because people were losing an incredible amount of money on the valuation of their homes. I don't want to go into this because it's too long a subject, but it's dear to my heart. If we have a problem here, there are ways to solve that problem without, asking for big amounts of money and that sort of thing. I don't think that we want to do it. The golf course would want us to do it. So I understand. Anyway, any other time?
John, do you know the percentage of homes on the golf course?
I'm sorry, what?
The percentage of Oakmont homes that are on the golf course?
There are about 440 Oakmont homes, so that's about 10%.
Thank you.
There are a lot of slides we weren't able to look at.
Thank you, John. As you can tell, this is a very complicated subject. We could spend the whole day on golf course. The element is online, it's in the library, and it's available for your review, and there's going to be plenty of time for further questions and answers. Right now, I'd like to turn the mic over to Jason Wilkenfeld, who's going to talk to us about Oakmont land use.
Thanks a lot. Some of this has been already covered, so I'll skip through it. I want to say that land use not only involves the long-range planning committee, but it also very actively involves the community development committee, and it's important that we maintain a dialogue because they're a major source of what's going on in terms of land use. So I'm going to talk a little bit. Here's another Google picture, but it shows something that's very familiar to us. I mean, Oakmont, interesting, Oakmont is sort of a hybrid. When the Burghers developed the original plan for Oakmont, which unfortunately has been lost, nobody's been able to recover it, they got the city of Santa Rosa to annex the land. So we're sort of like an isolated finger attached to the rest of Santa Rosa. Most of the land around Oakmont is either county land or state land, and sometimes the priorities of the non-city part of Oakmont don't necessarily coincide with what the city of Santa Rosa has planned. So that's an issue. So what I'd like to talk about very briefly, since we've covered it, is how Oakmont was developed, talk about how land is used, zoning impacts, because all these different agencies which control land use impact what's going on in Oakmont, and then sort of to give you a very, very brief overview of the developments around us which have been talked about, are in planning, or actually have been approved. Okay, we heard that this was developed by the Burghers starting in 1963, and as I said, they got the city to annex the land that became Oakmont. It's at the north end of the Sonoma Valley. Interestingly enough, depending on which organization you talk to, we are or are not part of the Sonoma Valley. For example, I think the viniculture appellation stops at Pythian Road. And some of the other organizations involved in land use issues in the Sonoma Valley don't consider Oakmont part of their region of concern. We have about 3,170 housing units on 1,400 acres. And of course, we all know that a major attraction for people moving in here, in addition to having family nearby, are all the state and county parks. I think there are 5 of them. The wineries, the cultural centers like the Green Music Center. So our surroundings are really just as important to us in attracting new residents to Oakmont as the amenities such as the golf club and the clubs and everything that have attracted us. There are 5 land use categories. They're residential. One interesting thing is that with the development of the meadows at the intersection of Oakmont Drive and California 12, this will be the last portion of the master plan for Oakmont, which is zoned for housing. Under the Oakmont zoning, up to 8 houses per acre permitted. We've talked about the golf course. It's about 15% of the total land comprising the Oakmont development, and it is indeed the green landscape core of the city. It is private property, so the OVA cannot directly influence what the golf course does. There's about 10 acres of commercially zoned property, and some of that, approximately 20% of it, is vacant, which is not really an attractive thing for the community. We also have Oakmont Gardens, which is a residential care facility, and all the lessees, that is the people who rent the dwelling units from the Oakmont Garden ownership, have all of the benefits of OVA membership. And then around us, there are 2 developments. One is Wild Oak, which is already developed, and which is El Nopa, which is a planned development just to the south of us, which have and will impact Oakmont in some ways. Okay, now Oakmont itself, the OVA, has about 20 separate parcels scattered all over the 1,400 acres. Of that, presently about 55 acres are vacant. Most of them are very small parcels, and they're not really developable. But there are about 23 acres which might be vacant and available for possible development. These are two of the largest ones. They're located near the golf course. One is the hillside, I think, which is to the west, roughly the west of the golf course, on the bottom here. The other one is roughly to the north. They're both about 5 acres each, but they're both, as you can see, neither one is flat, and it would be difficult to develop, for example, recreational facilities on them. The other thing is, it's very hard, because of the way Oakmont has been developed over the years, there is no single, there's no community development document that you can go to see all of the zoning. We've talked to the Santa Rosa City Development Organization. A lot of this stuff is just lost in microfiche and buried in places, and they're not inclined to go and find it. But if you look at the assessor's role for most of the open properties, they're zoned as open space with and without the possibility of putting buildings on them. So in order to actually develop anything, you'd have to go to the city and apply for a use permit, and some of this process could be extremely time-consuming and costly. The other thing which I might mention is that the golf course itself is zoned as recreation public park. So that limits the development that could occur without a potential developer. And I'm not saying that this is going to happen, without a significant process of trying to get the land rezoned. So that's a factor in protecting it, an important factor. This is another Google map. This is a list of all of the planned, possible, and approved developments along California 12, roughly from Kenwood up to not quite to basically up to Los Alamos. And you can see that some of them, like the dog kennel, has already been approved. They've just gotten a new zoning approval to develop a animal board and care facility, in addition to day boarding. There are several wineries that have been proposed or in the process of being approved around the entrance to Oakmont, which will require modifying the intersection at Oakmont Drive in California 12. And my understanding is, and anyone has more detail, I mean, the plan, I think, is to have them all exit through a single road at Oakmont Drive. And further to the south, you can see, we've all seen pictures of the proposed Ledson Winery, which is in the process of going through its approval cycle. And then across the road from Ledson, near Lawndale Road, is something which has had various names, but the one that I found is the Sonoma Inn La Campagna Resort. And this is a proposed housing development, restaurant, winery. And the thing about the wineries is most of them, and if you look at the descriptions of what's proposed, is they consist not only of a winery, they usually have an event center, which means they want to have anywhere from a dozen to 100 events a year. So all of these things have the potential, really, of drastically changing the way the Sonoma Valley looks. And one remark I might make about it is Oakmont politically is sort of in a funny position. We're part of Santa Rosa City, and unfortunately Santa Rosa elects all of its city council people at large. So there is no single council person that we can point to and say, you're our Oakmont representative. On the other hand, we're in a Sonoma County supervisor district, and our supervisor, Susan Gorin, lives in Oakmont, which actually starts at Oakmont and runs south to Sonoma. And the interesting thing about that seat is historically it's been represented by somebody who lives in the town of Sonoma. So we're sort of this hybrid child, partly in the Sonoma Valley and partly in the city of Santa Rosa. So, and this is just a list of some of the things that have been talked about or in various stages of planning or have been approved, either west of Oakmont Drive or south. And of course the question is, there's always continuing economic pressure to increase commercial development. We all know that developers are hardly ever give up. They usually have a lot of money, so they're big contributors to political campaigns. And I was just over with my wife in Sonoma Valley, and you can see how over the years, especially the southern part of the valley, has become basically one continuous strip of development. The question is, if some of these things continue to go on, are we going to become like the next Napa? That concludes my talk. Well, questions? I helped you catch up. Any questions?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
What's the status of the Sonoma Inn? I thought that had been approved.
I don't know, is there somebody here from OCDC who knows more than I do?
Wally's at the back.
Wally.
It has been approved some years ago. And you'll probably notice as you drive down towards Kenwood that a couple of years ago they started work on the road and putting in a stone wall headed back towards the northern hills. And then it kind of came to a standstill here about 6 months ago. But it is completely approved and slowly underway.
Yeah, and according to my notes, it's going to have a 50-room resort, a winery producing tens of thousands of cases, tasting room, sales room, 125-seat restaurant, and they want something of the order of 60 to 100 events a year, and they'll have around 25 lots for luxury homes.
No.
Changed again?
Comes back. No tasting room or winery was in the original approval. None. It was strictly a resort like the Soleil Auberge on the eastern side of the Napa Valley. In fact, it was owned by the same company.
Thanks for the update. Any other questions?
No more questions? Well, it looks like things are going to get busy around Oakmont in the future if all of these developments come online. What we are going to do now is move along to our next presenter. And that would be Lisa Berman, who is going to talk to us about the future Oakmont Research Project.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming. Glad to see you all here. Excuse me, I'm gonna... As you can see in the slide, we're starting a project for all of Oakmont called You're Important. You don't have to raise your hands or anything when I ask these questions, but just as an example, how many out there feel your voices have always been heard here when it comes to decision making? Thank you, Wally. I believe you. How many feel that sometimes projects come out to the public view and they're kind of a surprise to you? You think you never heard about them before. There are those too. How many of you, and you can raise your hands here, how many of you would like a say in Oakmont's future? Pretty unanimous. We on the Long Range Planning Committee, as you can see, we have been doing a lot of studying and reviewing and analyzing. And we got to a point, however, where we realized that your input has not been as much as we would like. And you can see the number of people in the room today. It's wonderful you're here, but it isn't a very huge percentage of everybody who lives at Oakmont. So we decided to do something about that. The purpose of doing a research project is to start actually getting the data with which we can do long-term planning and goal setting here in the community. In specific, we want to provide the board and the governing committees and leaders all around Oakmont with the ability to make data-driven decisions. Instead of just, hearing some people say, hey, I'd like this, or we see a need, something needs to be maintained, we want to be able to find out what you want now and what may be needed for the future. We need to identify future trends. I mean, we've heard about boomers, we've heard about new construction, we've heard about a lot of things today. The golf course. We need to also be able to identify future trends so that we are a desirable community for future purchases of our homes. And, not to say the least, we want to eliminate the waste of time and money in pursuing projects that ultimately don't go anywhere. This project, excuse me, I'm usually better than this. The other way. Okay, sorry. The project components will be several. It's a multimodal study, a series of attempting to get information from all the residents of Oakmont in one way or the other. The first thing will be listening sessions, and these are going to give us a heads up as to what's going on in Oakmont, what people think is important, what they want to see discovered through the scientific research process. There will be 4 of these, and you will see an announcement of when those will be in the August 15th Oakmont News. There'll be other things posted on social media. There'll be posters. We're going to get the word out. But they will cover 3 specific topics that people can come and communicate with us on, and then 1 general session to cover anything that we didn't already do. They will be at various times, 3 of them during the day and 1 at night. So hopefully everybody gets a chance to come to at least 1. Those listening sessions will give us a type of feedback we need with which to set up formal focus groups, where you have a facilitator who guides the discussion to answer specific aspects of specific issues and opportunities. Following that, we'll be doing a community-wide survey, and we are hoping to touch just about everybody in Oakmont in various ways in order to achieve this. It's not going to be a small sample like some surveys are. We hope to reach practically everybody. Following all that, we're going to do one-on-one interviews with various thought leaders, stakeholders, both inside and outside of Oakmont, to fine-tune what we know, to see how we better interact with the community outside of Oakmont. You just heard Jason talk about all that. We need to be interacting in some way. We need to figure out how. We created a steering committee to make all this happen, and I have to tell you, I'm on the Long Range Planning Committee and took this on as a role, but there's no way I could be doing the job that we're going to be doing without this steering committee, which is comprised of very, very experienced professionals. Kathy Saxena, who's here in the audience, is a PhD who spent her life either as a professor of market research or as an executive in market research. We also have Sue Dibble, who's also here today. She is a retired professor at University of California, San Francisco, professor of nursing, participated in many, many research projects, conducted and led research projects, and also is part of several institutes there and still has some role with PhD students who we may be able to get some interaction with. Art Shostak is here. Art is a retired sociology professor, also has done a lot of research in his career, and what's interesting is on his own, Art set up a listserv of, is it 16 or 20? 20 retired sociology professors around the country who live in over 55 communities. So he's going to be able to tap into this resource for us when we want to see what's going on elsewhere. Andy Altman is our board director. Andy is not a professional who's on our board and is a member of the steering committee. Andy, like me, is not a professional researcher, but we both used a lot of research in our marketing, communications, sales careers. So it's kind of the yin-yang. We've got the scientists and then we've got the people who utilize research. And I think between all of us, we have just a remarkable committee, and I'm very excited about the work we're going to do. In addition, Cassie Turner is on our committee for obvious reasons, and then various members of the Long Range Planning Committee have volunteered to assist. Our committee has determined that it's very important to do this in a professional way for a number of reasons, including reliability and credibility. We can't afford to have any of this research perceived to have an internal bias. You know, all those volunteers care about this, and then that's why the survey and the study skewed that way. That's not going to happen. We're going to have to hire some outside facilitators, including a research firm and a facilitator for our focus groups. It's going to take quite a while to complete for a couple of reasons, but we're fast on our way. We know as a committee that one of our charters is to do all we can to keep costs at a minimum. As you heard, they're qualified professionals from every realm of creating, conducting, and utilizing research, and between us, we can do a lot of the thinking that will lead to the products that we will use to conduct this research. I want to also say that Oakmont in its first 50 years has never done community-wide market research or a needs assessment or whatever you want to call it. This will be the first time. And so therefore we're kind of inventing the wheel because it has to be done and it has to be done comprehensively. It is our view, though, that this will be on a revolving basis, that we will continue to do studies and research within Oakmont, not necessarily as massive a scale as this, but to continue to tap into our residents so that we can keep up to date with what people want now and what people want in the future. The biggest hurdle for us at this moment is email addresses. The most cost-effective, reliable way to conduct a survey these days is via email. We understand that there will be some people who cannot or do not use email. And we will conduct some outreach efforts, whether it's going door to door with a laptop, setting up a computer center at the Burger, mailing out some surveys to people who really want it that way. But the most cost-effective way, the most reliable way, and the way we can slice and dice the information most efficiently is through email. So with that, I'd like Herm. Herm has some forms. If anybody here would like to give us your email address so we can give it to the office, I'd appreciate it. We have 1,200 emails. We'd like to have 3,300 to get this project on the road. So if you're already on the Oakmont email blast, if you're already on Oakmont's email blast system, you don't need to give us your email, but we sure appreciate it. This is your chance to be heard. It's your chance to be important in this community. It's your chance to let us know what you want, loud and clear. Any questions?
No, you're not on the email list. Anybody else? All right, Dave.
Question?
One of the, I'm Dave Northup, I'm a long resident here, live up in Brook Court. One of the sources of revenue that has been very, very helpful to Oakmont is the assessment fee when we sell homes, both in the Meadows and at the
Orchard.
Or the Orchard, thank you. And is it possible in the future to, because that's been they pay approximately $13,000, $14,000 per home, I understand. Is it possible in the future to have an assessment on home sales on a sliding scale? In other words, there's lots of ways you can dice this. If you've been here so many years, you pay according to the number of years. Could be by age. In other words, you age out after 80. Many people don't have resources anymore. That's one of the reasons they're selling their home. In other words, you'd have some sort of a formula, but yet some assessment on home sales to keep the dues, the monthly or yearly dues down for the present owners.
You know, that's not really my realm as the person who's leading a research project, but I do know there are people. It's first the research project, but there are people talking about other ways to get funds for Oakmont outside of just raising the dues, and I know that's one that people are talking about. Anybody with research questions back there?
I think I've signed up for my email, but I've not done blast. Has there been a blast out?
Cassie sends out an email every Friday. If you didn't get one last Friday, you probably need to give us your email again.
If you sign up for the email list, you'll get the weekly blast from Cassie's newsletter. There'll be, if there's an emergency, we can reach you a lot easier, like the water line breaks in your street and you want to know how to get water. Plus, the future long-range plan survey and outreach program makes it a lot easier. So it's not just for one purpose, it's for many purposes.
Please talk to your friends and neighbors and encourage them to give us your emails. We will be providing safeguards and privacy, so nobody's going to get your emails but the office.
Depending on your sources of email addresses, you probably have 3 or 4 for me. How are you going to handle that?
I'm going to leave that to Sue Dibble. Can Sue have a mic?
Before we send out the survey, we're going to download the email addresses with the person's name and then look and see how many we have. Part of the cleaning of the email thing for me to upload into the survey, it's called Survey Gizmo, but part of the process that we use is to make it you down to one address.
How do you know what you're mine?
Pardon?
How do you know which are mine?
Well, if you give your email address and you give your name, then obviously I know which ones are yours.
Oh, I see. You're getting a name with the address.
Yeah.
Name and an address with the email.
Thank you. I understand that.
Anybody else? Yes?
One of the points you brought out, as you progress, you're going to need to go to the outside for professional help and guidance. That needs to be done with caution, because in my experience, that the money spent for some of these professionals and their help, you might as well have taken the money and tossed it over the Golden Gate Bridge. So be very, very cautious on how you spend our money with some of these professional people with their so-called guidance and planning.
I understand, and we feel that that's very, very much a part of what we are tasked to do, is to make sure that we get the right professionals involved and that we get what we pay for. And between all of us on this steering committee and the members of the long-range planning committee, we're going to do really well with that, I think.
Put me on that committee and watch it.
Lisa, question is that,
yes.
As we heard from Jim's presentation, that 23% of the people who are renters.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any plan to exclude them from the survey or keep them separate? But their value, their opinions may be temporary, and the people that really count are the owners of those buildings.
Sue or Kathy can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the emails are only going to be accepted from the owners. No? Okay, I'm wrong.
Many Oakmonters rent for 7, 10 years. So we can't leave them out, but we can ask them if they rent or they own. And then we've got owners that don't live here. So when you check own, then the next question is going to be, are you a future resident? Are you owner occupied here? Are you using it for investment? Or is there some other reason why you have a place in Oakmont? I think that way we can get information and break it out by renters, we can break it out by owners who live here, we can break it out by future residents. I think that will all give us wonderful information. And rather than exclude someone, let's be inclusive.
that it? Well, stay tuned. You're going to see an article about this in the August 1st Oakmont News, and we will be continuing to provide information, and I hope you all make it to some of our listening sessions. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Long Range Planning Committee members. There are 9 of us. Remember, we don't get paid for any of this work. We work off of tips. So please be generous. We have 2 other newer members, Lisa and Herm Herman. I think you all know Herm. We also have a OVA board liaison, Herm Hess, who attends all of our meetings, and Donald Green, who attends our meetings, and he's from the Finance Committee. All very hardworking individuals. Again, if you need to contact us, if you go home and you think of something that you didn't think of today, email us. This address is in the Oakmont News every issue. Please feel free to attend our meetings. Sometimes we have 20 or 30 people attending. If we have a hot button issue, sometimes we have nobody attending. So you never know what to expect. Also, as Lisa said, we're going to have a series of news articles. We try to keep everyone up to date as far as letting you know what we're doing and publishing the information in the Oakmont News. So now, at this point, we still have time, and actually, my prediction of finishing up by 2:30 is right on the button. We can stay for as long as you like. If anyone has any comments or questions on any of the material we went over today, or even if it's not related, but you think if it's important for the future of Oakmont, up to you. What do you like to? There's a question right in front.
How many trees are cut down every year, and how many are planted every year? Okay, I'm only giving you, I walked the park course, and I've noticed a dozen, since I've been here, 2 dozen trees that have been cut down, chopped up, and mulched, or whatever, but I don't see any planted. If you continually chop down trees, eventually you'll have no trees.
Good point, and maybe Frank wants to.
I've asked the Landscape Committee if they could give me an inventory of the trees in Oakmont, and they are searching to see if there has been such an inventory, but I haven't received it back yet, so we don't know your answer.
But many communities do have a policy of one-on-one replacement, one-for-one replacement. If it's on OVA property, if a tree is cut down, a new one gets planted somewhere else. And maybe that's a policy we might want to consider writing into the plan. Back here.
Can OVA encourage the city of Santa Rosa to enforce the sign restrictions?
OVA can encourage the city to do anything, whether they follow up on it or not. The big question. John Taylor, do you know that, have we ever contacted the city to come through and occasionally look at the enforcement of the sign ordinance?
I'm not aware that we ever have.
Not aware that we have.
Doesn't mean we haven't, I'm just not personally aware.
I see, yeah, it might be a good idea. Who knows? Personally, I have no problem with any commercial business sign as long as it's legal. Excuse me. But if it's illegal, then it should come down because you need a level playing field. You don't want some businesses abiding by the zoning law and others flagrantly abusing it. So we'll take that under consideration and maybe look into that. Wally.
We did contact Caltrans some years ago when we had a plethora of pickup trucks with sandwich boards in the back along
Yes,
the entrance.
I remember that.
And Caltrans said, yes, that is illegal. And no, they don't have the money to enforce it. but
thanks for the thought anyway.
We did go to the businesses that were doing it, and it took them a while, but they finally stopped.
Okay, well, maybe if the city won't enforce it or send someone out and they don't have the personnel, perhaps we could send them a letter asking them politely to conform to the law. There are a number of options, but I think it's important for our image. Question over here, Sue.
I was at a VOTBA meeting last week, and they're having the same problem in Kenwood. And I think one of the problems is they, of course, are not under City of Santa Rosa. Santa Rosa has rules where you can have a sign a certain size up outside for a certain number of days. So what you need is somebody who will stand there and check every day and see how long the sign is up and then make the complaint. I mean, it's very convoluted and difficult, but I think that talking to the owners, and if they know that residents of Oakmont are unhappy with signs that are flapping in the breeze all the time, they may decide that for the good of the goodwill with the people will change their signage. I think it'll be more effective than trying to go to City of Santa Rosa at this point.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm a little uneasy after the golf discussion as to any obligation an individual homeowner would have if the golf management had problems.
Well, what do you mean by golf management?
The owners.
This is the club itself?
The owners.
If the golf course fails.
Yeah, okay. The golf course or the golf club is a corporation, so there's limited liability in any event. But the issue, if that were to happen, and let me emphasize, it ain't happening. And the reason why one of the reasons why this thing ever got started in the first place is that I was a futurist at one time, and one of the things that you do when you're going to make a forecast is you got to look at a whole bunch of different things. You got to look at the unusual events as well as what you expect, and that got out of hand, I guess. I don't see the golf club failing at this point anytime soon, but you never know. You could have a terrible conflagration here, you could have a drought that goes on for 30 years and so on. Now, you don't want to get caught not knowing what to do in a situation like that. You've got to have some contingency plans, and that's what we try to do in this element. But in terms of whether we're likely to fail or not, that seems to be increasingly unlikely because it looks like the recession is going to be, it is ending, and our unemployment rate is back down again. Now, there are other things to consider too, but we're trying to do a thorough job. Does that answer your question?
I would just add one thing. Remember when Jason gave his presentation on zoning, it's important to note that the golf course, OGC, is indicated in the general plan of the City of Santa Rosa as park and recreation. So any change from a park and recreation use, which includes golf course, would require not only a change of zoning, but also a change of the general plan, which means hearings from now until doomsday, intense public scrutiny. They're not going to slip a fast one by you and start building homes tomorrow morning.
Yeah, right. The thing is that there are many cases where these sorts of things have happened to overbuilt communities. And we're looking at what other communities have done. But I do think that the loss of the golf club would be a real blow to Oakmont. However, if there are ways to prevent that from happening, we really need to know and consider what those could possibly be. And that's what's in the element.
Some years ago, the golf club was looking into building half a dozen houses on acreage that was not used actively in the golf course itself. And the zoning at that time, and I don't know if the wording has been changed, but the zoning at that time, it's probably 10 years ago, was open space in perpetuity. And both the city, county, and the state told the golf club that it would be virtually impossible to change that due to the legal ramifications, the cost, etc. So it's something we really do have to look at if the golf club were to go bankrupt. And I agree with John, I don't, that's so remote a possibility. I wouldn't worry about it, but we would have a huge amount of acreage in the middle of Oakmont that's going to be weeds.
Maybe we could grow grapes.
If we just pay no attention to it.
Yeah, how to deal with something like that would be a real problem. If the golf club were to default, then the bank would take it over. And I don't know if you want banks to decide what's happening in Oakmont. I'm not so sure I want to. Who knows who they might sell it to if somebody wanted to buy it.
Additional comments, questions, objections, criticisms? Cyril?
Since the conversation has come down to the golf course, I think I have a couple of comments I'd like to make. I think it's wrong to assume that the only reason the revenue from golf courses is declining is because of the recession. I think there's a national tendency of all the people that are coming up in not being involved in golf as much. So let's not assume, put all our baskets in the fact that golf course is going to come rebounding back. In the event that it doesn't, we should have contingency plans. Like Tony said, there are parks and recreation. We must have a land use plan to see if we can convert these golf courses to some other kind of parks and recreation that's commensurate with the zoning laws and make the housing values and the value to Oakmont remain the same.
I think the best way to deal with this thing is just keep the club from going bankrupt. And that is actually, it looks like it's a very simple thing to do. OVA may not have anything to do with the solution to the problem. Marketing seems to be a big part of it. And we now have Kemper Sports, who have joined us as our management company. They are enormous. They've got golf courses all over the country. They're really good at marketing. They've got 5,500 employees, to give you some idea of what kind of muscle they've got. We think that they're going to really solve a lot of our problems. One thing to remember is that we've come through a bad recession. It's really almost a depression. And of course it affected golf all over the country. We had a problem here in that we had to install irrigation, and that led to deteriorating conditions in the golf course. So some of our business went away and went to Bennett Valley or someplace like that, but the golf course is getting back into good shape again. And a number of us are pretty optimistic about what's going to happen here. The golf course used to make an incredible amount of money at one time, and my guess is that as things correct themselves, it'll probably do it again. So that solves the problem.
Tony, I'd like to offer a suggestion in your search for getting more community input. The kind of things that you've described call for people to come to sessions that you organize. Perhaps there's an opportunity for you to go to them in terms of getting Oakmont Gardens management to set up a participatory session on their turf at a time that fits their schedule, where large numbers of people could get together. Perhaps Oakmont groups, like the lawn bowlers have brown bags. Maybe there'd be a cooperative adventure that they devote a brown bag session to providing some input opportunities for you. The kind of work you're trying to do, I think, is so important that anytime you can reach out to them, even though the group may be small or narrowly focused, may help you get more input.
I can address that a little. It's surprising to me. First of all, thanks, John. It's a good idea, and one we've actually been starting to tackle within the steering committee. And I want everybody to know here that we all are very grateful to John and the rest of the board for making this research project one of their main priorities for 2014. So that gives us an imprimatur that we're very happy with. I didn't want to take too much time, so I didn't get down into the details, but various members of our steering committee are offering to meet with Loma hiking group, grandparents group, and to tell them what we're doing, why we're doing it, and why it's going to be important for them to participate. I think Oakmont Gardens is another good idea, but we don't expect that everybody's just going to show up when we ask them to. We have to go to them too, and I think it's an excellent suggestion.
Other comments? Okay. Well, hearing none, then I would like to thank you all for attending. I think we have shared a lot of information. Go home and think about it, and remember, contact us. Look for ways to provide your input. This is just the beginning. It's not the end. Thank you.